So today I'm interviewing Mr. Carter Arrington. Now, this is a real pleasure of an interview because actually I went to high school with Carter and we were in the same music theory class. I got to see him in his metalhead stage, which I really enjoyed. He was impressive from when I first met him that first day. And he just continued to impress all throughout life. In this interview, we're going to be talking about his college experience and all the things that... Anyway, he went to a lot of different colleges and figured out how to be himself. We're going to talk about recording and when to start making music, his life regrets and big mistakes. And he's been on tour. He's now currently living overseas now. That's where his life has taken him. So I hope that you guys will enjoy this interview. But before we do that, I want you to see this live performance of Carter taking a solo with Arthur Brown. Let's take a look. Get right into it, Carter. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how old you are, where you're living, where you came from, family life.
And I think I'll be 38 in a couple of months. I went to high school with Mr. Womack at Cave Spring High in Roanoke, Virginia. And I've been living in the UK, in Salisbury, England, which is about 3 miles from Stonehenge, about 90 minutes from London. London's that way.
Awesome.
I've been here for about a year and a half, but was in Austin, Texas for about 15 years, which is a huge music city and a good spot for all that.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. What was your home life growing up, in school? What was that like?
Man, my mom was teaching art at the time, and so she definitely had a creative background and was pretty supportive of all that. My dad was in the computer industry at the time. He was kind of always working on tech stuff. We always had a computer in the house when not a lot of people had a computer, which is pretty cool.
Right.
He also had a smoking stereo. Like he was kind of a high fidelity guy. He enjoyed nice stereos. He dug music. We had a big music collection, so I was always kind of sifting through his CDs and checking stuff out. But yeah, nobody was a musician in the house, but it was all supported and it was cool. Which awesome. I know some people don't have that kind of story. Like a lot of Nintendo, old NES. And actually, man, to this day, I think that was the first music I really connected with. Because, man, that's some serious compositions, man. Even to this day, they were no slouches, people that were writing those soundtracks. And they also, like on the on the earliest ones, Legend of Zelda or Super Mario Brothers, stuff like that. They had basically 3 audio tracks. And then 1 track that would do rhythm. Maybe it was 2 rhythm tracks and 3 actual melodic tracks. But the stuff that they wrote with such a limited palette is insane.
Oh, yeah.
I think about it.
Yeah, no, there's a Google, I think it's called Music Lab, and they have a rhythm track. And when I started playing with it, I was like, this is how they made the Nintendo drums. And it's literally just 1 sound. And you raise and lower the pitch to get the different. So the hi-hat was just a really high pitch rhythm sound. The snare was just medium and the kick was a lower. I was like, oh yeah. My God.
That's it. It's all right here. It's so close.
So how about your high school experience, man? What was that like?
I guess kind of by the time you knew me, where I really started to get into music is kind of how I wound up being who I was at that time. And, on my street, there was this older kid that I would hang out with all the time. I don't know why I hung out with this guy or why he hung out with me, but it was a pretty drastic age difference of maybe 4 years.
That's a big deal at that age.
It's a big deal when you're in elementary school or something. But man, we'd go over to his house, we'd be playing video games constantly and listening to heavy metal. And that was it. So he turned me on to, it was like Metallica and Slayer, Pantera, and all these metal bands. And I was just like, whoa, man, this is some really heavy, intense music. It's very different from anything that my parents had. So I would kind of take those CDs and go home. And by the time I was about 12, this was really weird, but I did it. It's like I had a boombox by the bed.
Same.
You know, you probably did this, like, you know, you just fall asleep to music. That was the thing that you would kind of do. You'd be like, you know, listen to this stuff all day and you're just really into it. But I'd be falling asleep to like Slayer and like
what?
my mom's like, you know, like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Like, it was great. It's what I was listening to, you know. I had been listening to music really critically. I didn't know I wanted to play an instrument yet, but I had thought about it. And like even these you know, these Metallica cassettes and stuff that I was listening to, I would actually get to a point to where I'd heard them enough, I would memorize the music, you know. And so I'd be in school and I'd kind of be like playing the tune through in my head.
I know exactly what you mean.
Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like, okay, here's that intro solo, and you just kind of do it. So yeah, it made sense that like everything, you know, it's pretty guitar heavy music, and I kept memorizing all the guitar parts. I wasn't paying attention to the drum parts. So I hadn't had that summer yet to where like you decide you're really going to do something. You know what I mean? It's a moment it came on. But yeah, by the time it was that class, I'd been taking guitar lessons for maybe 3 years.
Okay. Because when I met you, I remember vividly. I attempted to take jazz band, and we were sitting there waiting for, this was like before school, and I'm watching you do this thing on the guitar, and I'm like, dude, you're playing the guitar like a bass. And like, yeah, I'm like messing around with like this slap guitar idea, and I'm just like, this is insane. This guy's incredible.
Man, well, the funny thing about that jazz band thing, because I remember taking the first sheet that Mr. Tucker ever had us read. I remember taking it to my guitar teacher, and I was just like, Tim, like, what on earth is
Tim, dude, I know Tim. Oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry.
I love Tim. I love Tim Martin. Tim Martin was a fantastic guitar teacher.
Yeah.
And actually, like, man, his patience and like, man, the quality of an instructor he was made a huge difference in me continuing to do that. I learned tons from him. But man, I remember I'd taken that first chart, and it was just, I mean, man, it was just hell on earth. Just looking at it, it was just like, oh my God, this is so complicated. Even as I do this now, like, you know, I'm a quote unquote professional now, or I have like, oh, you have a jazz degree. It's like, man, that would still make me sweat. Like, I mean, they're just like throwing these charts that are just murderously hard in front of people that are like 15. You're just like, what's a C minor 6? Like, I have no idea. Like, I know how to play like 3 Nirvana songs. Like, what are we doing here? It's just,
dude. It was so true.
And like, you know, Mr. Tucker and Mr. Bentley, like, man, they didn't know how to deal with any guitar players. It's just like, oh, you don't play piano. Like, you shouldn't be here. But like, okay, it's a thing.
So at this point, you've discovered metal. So what were you into before that then? Like, I mean, obviously you were listening to music.
Like, I was listening to some stuff, but it was like stuff that my parents had around, you know, like there'd be like, you know, man, there'd be like, okay, like my mom's got a Paula Abdul record. Like, what's that about? It's like, okay, like dance music, cool. Like, here's like Stevie Ray Vaughan, like that's cool. You know, my dad liked big band. He liked Mambo and stuff like that. Yeah.
So that's a pretty widespread of genre, especially for like back then. There was no Spotify, there was no Apple Music. You know, if you had something, you had to go get it.
Yeah, you did. You really did. And the other thing that was really different too, like MTV is where I found everything. Like,
they actually used to play music, guys. It's crazy.
They had a show, Headbangers Ball.
Oh yeah.
Every Saturday, and man, I would record it. I'd put a tape in the VCR, and I would record that. And man, I discovered, you know, 2 or 3 of my favorite bands still that, you know, that I still listen to just because of that. That's how we pinch stuff back then. You know?
Yeah, man. That's exactly what you did. Yeah. There was no downloading. It was, you had to wait and hope and pray that it actually played so you could hit record at the right time.
And I was just starting to realize that I was really into playing guitar.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I was into it. And then I think that summer, Will Solari and I, we went to a week-long session at Berklee College of Music. And we went up there, and that was the trip that made me decide to, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I was all of a sudden, you know, being in a town like Roanoke, you know, having people like, you know, yourself or like Will or like Sharif or Tommy or people that were like into music, that were playing instruments and, you know, doing things. Going from that to where all of a sudden you're in a dorm room and you're 15 and there's 150 other people from around the country who are into it just as much, if not more than you are. Oh man, like cool, these are my people. Like this is like cool. It's okay to be this into this. Because it just felt kind of weird, you know? You know what I'm trying to say.
You went to Berkeley and you're like, wow, this is the world that I want to live in. And so did you go to Berkeley?
I wanted to, and but man, that place is just ridiculously expensive.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I know guys that went there for a year and they're still paying off debts from 10 years ago. It's like
Wow.
40K a year, man, you know, to hop out in the music industry, which is one of the most dangerous industries to get into. But I've met some extremely talented people that went there, and you know, it was definitely a good choice for them. I guess around the time when I hit about 16, my parents split. My parents had split a few years before that, but my mom had met somebody that she was going to remarry. Her and me and my sister, we moved to Marietta, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And so I moved there when I was about 16. So I was going into my junior year in a new school, in a new state, in a new town. At that point, basically, I absolutely hated the last 2 years of high school. The new place I was at was nowhere near as cool as Cave Spring was.
Wow.
You know, it was kind of a spoiled community. It was for richer kids, and it was, I don't know, it was just weird. It was just a different hang. I didn't grow up in it. It felt awkward, and everybody's kind of got their social groups set by that
Right.
point. It's kind of hard to be breaking into anything. You know, like, so high school was kind of dark the last 2 years, but a couple of good things happened. I wound up getting a job at this music store, which was called Mars Music, and it was
Nice.
this huge, massive. It's like, you know, it was like 2 or 3 times bigger than the Guitar Center. Man, I was 16. I was supposed to be, they weren't able to hire anybody unless you were 18, but they made an exception, which was really cool of them. And I just worked there on weekends. And it was basically like a music sales job. All of a sudden, I went from, you know, being in a town like Roanoke to working on this sales floor in like downtown Atlanta in the guitar department. So I would have like, man, like probably 200 interactions a day with people from, you know, all different ages, all different races, all different kinds of backgrounds.
Awesome.
And you know, they were like, you know, trying to buy guitars or, you know, curious about stuff. And it was a good environment to sell something that I kind of believed in, that was cool. You know, I loved guitars and it was an easy thing to sell. And, but man, this social aspect of that job was pretty critical, actually. Like, it taught me a lot. Just meeting people and being social and, you know, being gregarious and having open conversations or doing things like that. So that was kind of my one little respite. And the second one came from, there was a music school that was a night school called the Atlanta Institute of Music. Like, and I went there, and it was a similar kind of situation. You're supposed to be 18, and you're supposed to have graduated high school. And I was just like, please, God, let me go to school here because I need something. I'd wake up. I'd go to a full day of high school. Then I'd get in the car. I'd drive about 45 minutes through traffic all the way across town at this school that went from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. And that was all. It was basically like a vocational based performance school. So like I'd have a scales class. I'd have, you know, a reading class, rock performance, jazz performance, ear training, chord melody, you know, all that kind of stuff.
That's some pretty heavy stuff right there.
It was like, man, it was a focused thing. It was not like, and at the time that was not the most efficient school, but I learned a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff out of the way. So yeah, it was kind of like I was going to high school, doing that at night, and then working on the weekends. So I didn't have much of a social life, but that's just kind of what I was doing. Yeah, man, by the time I finished that, I mean, I was 18. I didn't really have a plan. So I went to Middle Tennessee State University. That's where it was, in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That was a big audio school. They had a big recording industry program. And I did a year there with that as a major, but didn't really want to do that. It was just kind of my first year of college, just kind of trying to figure everything out. Did a year there and met some great people and stretched out and had a great time. But realized like, okay, this doesn't make sense for me, or this isn't a really good fit. I'm not that into audio. I'm not that into recording. So I ended up coming back to Atlanta and Marietta to just kind of regroup. I didn't know what else to do. So I went and was hanging out at the old school again. And then I met this guy that was in school there, and but his name's Emil Wursler, Emil Werstler. It's a weird
That's
name.
quite a name.
It's quite a name. And he's like this powerhouse freak metal guitarist. He's great. And so
I
him
mean,
and
with
I,
a name like that.
yeah, I mean, he's serious, man. Yeah, you got to see him play. He's terrifying. But like, so him and I met, and we just hit it off. It was like, oh man, like yes, it was the Berkeley thing all over again. It's like
Right.
you're like, oh man, like two thieves see each other on the road. You're like, I know you, like I know what you're about. And man, we just him and I just we just started playing together 8-9 hours a day. That's just all we
Wow.
get together and just shed and play guitar. And at the time I had started my first like real teaching job, out of a school. And so that's really when I started teaching, because it sure beat working the floor and making $9 an hour when I could sit in a room one-on-one with a guitar student and make 25. So,
Right. Nice.
so okay, this ain't so bad. And so then from there, so him and I were, just going crazy and getting as good as we could in a year, while he was going to school. And then I decided to try the college thing again. This time I went to Belmont University, which was also in Nashville, another big
Okay.
recording program. But I went, I was trying to do a performance degree at this point. It's like, okay, I want to play guitar. I want to play electric guitar in college. That's what I want to do.
So how old are you at this point? You've already started giving lessons, and you've
Yeah, I think,
colleges.
yeah, the first time I started teaching, I probably taught the first lesson I ever gave at like 17,
Oh
probably.
wow. Okay.
But at this point, like, yeah, I mean, I was 19,
Okay.
19, 20. But yeah, so I'm at Belmont, and this is once again, it's kind of like a Berkeley kind of thing. It's an expensive school. It's out of state tuition, and man, it just wound up being a jazz degree. That's all it was. So it's
Gotcha.
like they kind of build it as a commercial music degree, and it's like, okay, well maybe it'll be rock, or maybe it'll be this other stuff, and it just wound up being jazz. So from the school that I went to previously, the vocational kind of place, I knew enough to fool people. Like I knew like
Nice.
I
Nice.
had I had a lot of fretboard stuff. Like I could play. That didn't mean I knew what I was doing. So like somehow in like the first audition, I just managed to like they happen to call the two songs that I know. It's just, oh, so anyhow, after a semester of that, I was not digging it at all. It was a bad fit. It was a religious university. I'm not a religious guy, so that was like we had some grind there. It just wasn't my scene. It was just a jazz degree. So I called Will Solari, and our friend from
Oh yeah.
the old theory class, and I was like, Will, what are you doing? Like, where you living? He's like, oh man, I'm in Austin. Like, you should come down here. And I
Okay.
was just like, yeah, okay, like let's do it. Packed the car and drove out to Texas, and yeah, man, that was it. I went to a community college, which was college number 3 or 4, I guess if you include the initial vocational school. But I did that for a semester. Had some great teachers there, and that was really cool. Some of the best English and theory teachers I've ever had. And then auditioned for UT, and thankfully got in. They had one slot,
Wow.
and thankfully I
Wow.
got it. So and yeah, man. And then that at that point, that's kind of when I felt like I started getting like, now you're trying to figure out how to play jazz.
I remember seeing that play out, through social media. You get this weird ability to like semi-stalk people, you know.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. You're seeing what people were throwing out. That's like,
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, he's in Austin now. Oh, that's cool. And then you start putting out content, and I'm like, wait, what happened to the metal guy?
yeah, it's a man, and that's still in there.
Yeah.
I was never, yeah, like as I started getting into like more of the guitar, like yeah, I don't know, man, your taste change, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but it started from metal. I got all the metal stuff that I was checking out, and I started getting into fringier and fringier guitar. And I found at some point like I needed something else to kind of cut this with, and so I got really into like Parliament Funkadelic and just
Nice.
like soul and stuff like that. And man, I got really into George Benson. I heard and I was just like, man, this guy's out of his mind. Like this music is funky, it's crazy. And as I've gotten older, like I realized why I like that music so much. And some of my favorite producers were making his tracks. It's like, oh, okay, like this is all Quincy Jones, and these are all
Gotcha.
like all these devastating musicians that like did all of Michael Jackson's music and everything that you've ever heard that's like awesome, funky and popular and amazing. These are those dudes. You know, you add like George's ability to sing and just like play murderous guitar. You're just like, this, like, what is going on over here? Like, this is completely different. Period of acoustic stuff, and that was drastically different. Then like jazz happened as I got into like improvising and being better as an improviser. So that was kind of the thread that connected all of it. Because once I got into that, I was like, I love, you know, all these other aspects of music. You know, I love many elements of music, but something that was always fascinating to me, and it's why I was really obsessed with like learning guitar solos and things like that, was just, oh man, like, you know, I was interested in becoming an improviser. And that was kind of the thing to where you're like, oh, well, that's what this music is all about.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So metal, soul, jazz. It got more listenable and then less listenable. Like at that point.
You moved to Austin, you get the jazz stuff going. Was music already your full-time paying gig at this point? How did you end up going on tour and connecting with musicians? Because there's a lot of guys and people that go to school and do all this and move around, and they don't necessarily get the job.
That was very like a brick by brick kind of thing. Upon moving to Austin, like I could play, that I knew a lot of stuff about guitar, but I had very little live experience at all. I think the first gig I ever played in Roanoke, I was so petrified just because I had no idea what a performance felt like. And it just like, I was just like a deer in headlights. Yeah, man. So like I didn't have a lot of experience by the time I got to Austin, but one of the big perks of Austin is that it's very much a live town. They do have Austin city limits, which was a big deal, but it was a lot of like, you know, a lot of people playing gigs. And that was exactly what I needed. I mean, basically the whole time I was in school, I was taking every piece of work that I could get. And some of them were the worst possible bands I've ever played with. That's, I mean, yeah, you just start wherever you start. But some of it was really cool. Yeah, I think I hooked up with like the first band that ever took me out of town. And then I was like, man, this is pretty cool. Like, this is kind of neat. And, I'm liking this gigging thing. This is kind of fun. So yeah, eventually kind of being in the ecosystem of like a jazz program, you're all kind of insulated. All the people in the program are kind of trying to do the same thing. And all of us were getting together and practicing and trying to get better. If somebody like went and picked up a gig, they'd call all their friends, so all of a sudden all of us would be playing, a Monday happy hour with this singer. But yeah, man, so after enough time goes by and, if you don't, if you succeed in more situations than you fail in publicly, you start kind of growing enough of a reputation to where your phone starts to ring. And eventually enough of those happen to where you're just, I don't know, kind of steadily just increasing what kind of reputation that you have and the kind of work that you're doing. And then better stuff starts to come across your desk.
Yeah.
Really.
Well,
So,
I mean, I'm not shocked that you're as successful at this point, just because the limited interactions that we had at arguably one of the most obnoxious times of life, teenage boyhood. You were awesome. You were just a cool dude.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Well, and I mean, that's how you keep the job.
Right.
Actually, is that it's like, okay, like a lot of people can show up and do it well, because there's no shortage of talent anywhere in the world, especially like with an instrument like guitar. There's just hundreds of thousands of brilliant guitarists everywhere. Being able to hang and being easy to talk to. And to be honest with you, if I hadn't had that sales job and I hadn't had like, good people around me that I grew up with, that I wasn't in some of those things that made me at ease, it all contributed. It all was useful. That's still useful. All you've got to do, just, keep doing what you're doing, like be cool, do the best job that you can. And you're just like, yeah.
So you picked up work. You're obviously super talented, super good guy. I mean, I would assume that your professionalism, commitment to learning the songs is there with it. Just, I mean, you don't memorize entire solos without hard work.
That's it. And that was its own kind of sub skill set to work out. When it's Monday and somebody calls you for something on Friday or Wednesday, like in 48 hours, and they're like, hey, can you learn 30 songs?
Wow.
It's like, well, I don't know. And you say yes, and you try and figure out a way to learn 30 songs, and after you do that enough, you're like, well, this isn't working very well. Maybe I should figure out a way to make it work better.
Yeah. So how did you end up in the UK? I mean,
I've got a British wife. She was managing a recording studio in Austin, and we met when I was there with a band on a session, and we just wound up hanging out, and just totally hit it off. And I think we had been together about 8 months, and then she was pregnant. And we were like, okay, well, haven't been together that long, but
got to make some decisions.
yeah, about to have our first kid. And so I said, I kind of looked at her. I was just like, well, if we don't kill each other in 3 years, maybe we should get married after that. She's we're great together. She's
Awesome.
perfect. She's excellent. And our kids got old enough to where they were getting close to where they were going to school. And man, we even owned our house in Austin. We owned it outright.
Wow.
Mortgage. And man, we were still spending $4,000 a month, easy.
Wow.
If not more, just on that, just going out. And that's a pretty good city to be a musician in. So it got to that point, we're not going to be able to come up with another $1,500, $2,000, to put them in private school.
Right.
Place down the street is super sketchy, and that's not going to work. We decided to just try something big, man. So she's from here. We knew the schools here were good. We knew that the it's free healthcare, which is a great thing.
Right.
And move it and try in a different country, man. That being said, it's initially it was a terrifying experience. It was a huge change. Yeah, so completely drastic shift from what I was doing before in a completely different environment. So
how long have you been there now?
2 years. And I'll still fly back to America fairly often. So it's kind of been trying to figure out like a mobile thing, and just which even with what's happening now,
right?
I'm just kind of like, well, I'm kind of glad I've been doing this the last year. I mean, man, if I was back in Austin doing what I was doing for 15 years, like I would be in a much worse position.
So you're dad and married and doing all this stuff, and I guess you're gonna soon be completely English at this point, right?
No, man, I'm fighting tooth and nail.
What's a typical day of practice look like for you?
I mean, at this point, like fairly unorganized at this point, but like in times that I was really extremely organized, it would be like, you've kind of got all these different kinds of subjects, and they're all subjects that at this point in like how long I've played guitar, I feel like it's nothing I ever master. They're just things I get better at. Like, I'm never gonna know everything about the fretboard. It's never gonna happen. But I do get better at it. I get better at it every year, or I find like new ways to work on things to keep things being better. But yeah, kind of what I like. I mean, most of what I think about now, if I'm actually going to sit out and practice, I'm trying to explore something. That's what I'm trying to do when I practice now.
Nice.
I'll sit down and I may say like, okay, like today I'm going to think about time. And if I'm thinking about time, I might say like, well, I'm not great with my triplets, at a certain tempo. And so I'll sit. So I might sit here and I might just practice. Okay, can I just kind of, can I snatch each triplet out of thin air?
Yeah.
So it's like dot, 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 dot.
Wow.
Dot, dot, dot. So it's little games and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So just little, and those are just fundamental things I'll work on. With the guitar, if I've got something that I'm not good at, like a certain scale or arpeggio or something, I'll try and take it through all 12 keys in one spot. That's something that shows me things that I'm horrible at. That's really most of it. It's just like trying to find things I'm bad at.
I mean, that's what I was getting ready to say is like, it sounds like, practice it for you. Cause obviously you've been doing it full time, unless you have like a gig lined up where you got to learn a set, but even then it sounds like it would still apply where you're listening to yourself, evaluating it, saying, here's this part where I need to work on it. And you spend the time and invest the time working on that.
Big time. Yeah, absolutely. And you just start looking at all these areas like, okay, do I have a lot of melodic knowledge? Do I know a lot of tunes? Like how do I feel about chords in the, like, or if I'm looking at the major scale, do I understand how all the chords work in it? Can I do that on the fretboard? Can I do the same thing with melodic minor or harmonic minor or any of these? I used to practice out of fear.
Huh.
Like I would feel like pressure to get all this stuff down or to be better and to constantly be better. In some cases, it's competitive. If you're around a lot of other people that are getting better,
Right.
they're like going for it. Like, you know, that's some of what would motivate you to do that. So as I've gotten older, and I'm also kind of falling into how I play.
Knowing yourself.
Like it's something I read, like it's a Miles Davis quote. I think I read it the other day. It's like, man, it takes a long time to play like yourself. It's really true, man. It takes a long time to do that. I feel like that's when people have an identity musically.
But this takes hard work.
There's no like reward with it. Not in the traditional sense of like, you know, I'm going to go to 9 years of school and become a doctor, like so I can get this kind of job, or so I can heal sick people or do any of that stuff. This is like the craft and the amount of effort that you put into this. It's the joy is very personal. It is for me. Yeah. I know for some other people it's like that, and you know, but a lot of people see it, and I know musicians this way too, and we don't get along. It's people that they just do it because like, oh man, you know, I want to be on stage, or like, oh okay, like I want to be famous, or I want to do this. It's just like that's never why I picked it up. I picked it up because I was fascinated with the instrument, and I was fascinated with music. And like, and to the end of it, that's still all I care about. Like, I don't care if it's if I have any degree of success, if I'm doing something very honest or something that's very me. Like, that is not my motivator. Even as all this stuff is going on, I'm still just like, yeah, okay, like what can I learn about this today?
And my hope and goal in all of these interviews is to, you know, maybe save some of these students some time.
And a short answer to your earlier question would be, if I had 1 hour to practice, and let's say I wanted to work on 4 things, I would do something melodic for 15 minutes. I would do something harmonic, which is, you know, dealing with chords. I would do something rhythmic for 15 minutes, and I would work on something with articulation and dynamics for 15 minutes.
Good stuff. Cool, man. Well, let's switch gears. Life-altering bands or albums.
I think like Metallica's Master of Puppets. That was like the first record where I was, wow.
Yeah.
So like that was the first record I like devoured. Just
nice.
Endless. Bad Religion was another band. They had a song that came out in like 93 that I heard on Headbangers Ball. I rewound that tape 100 times to listen to that one song. And I finally saw them live last year when I was playing a festival in Vegas.
Wow.
They killed it. They were great. But that was one. Black Sabbath. Man, I got way into Black Sabbath. That was the first band that I feel like was, I was just like, man, I could just listen to this all day. Man, Michael Hedges' Aerial Boundaries, that was like a huge record as a guitarist that I listened to, that I loved. Greg Howe, his record 5 had some of the most devastating playing I've ever heard on it. Who else? Wayne Krantz's 2 Drink Minimum. That was a huge record for me. In college, it was Tribal Tech. I got really into this band, Tribal Tech. That was nuts. You know, like in that dorky kind of way. It's like, you know, it's a bunch of dudes with instruments that play D&D. Like it's
I love it.
It's just like, man, you know, like we care a lot about this. It's just like, dude, nobody else cares. Like nobody else cares. Yeah, man.
Well, in a dorky, nerdy kind of way. How about this? Amp Sim. Talk to me.
Oh man, I love it as a convenience. Use it like I use a Kemper when I record live or record at home, because I'm not a tech guy at all. I'm a caveman. You know,
you're running a Kemper, but you're not a tech guy.
No, it's like I literally like turn it on. It's already plugged in to everything. Like I know how to hit record and like, you know, dial up a sound. But yeah, anything beyond that, like I hate using it when I have to. Pedals, that's always preferable. But man, but it's come a long way. There's some sonic wizards out there. They can just do amazing things with that gear.
All right, so let's get serious for a second here. Now, I love this question. It's, what would you tell yourself 20 years ago, that Carter kid back in high school, that 18-year-old you?
Yeah.
What would you tell him today?
Man, that's a good question. Boy, that's a really good question. Man, I would tell him to, man, don't worry so damn much. Keep doing what you're doing. Like, all of it's fine. It all worked out fine. It's like the amount of like that. Actually, I would have told him to write music.
Wow.
Told him to write music as early as possible. That is one thing I'm super pissed at myself that I did not do.
Wow.
Earlier. Just because how important it is. It's really important to do that. And maybe like a few years ago, I got a Mac with Logic on it, and all of a sudden it was like, this is really easy to actually put down ideas now. Not that any of those ideas I put down are necessarily good, but it started this whole process. After I do it for a year and a half, you're just like, you look at what you were doing 2 years ago and what you can do now, and you're just like, man, that's kind of cool. That's something I really regret not doing. But I was so kind of obsessed with the instrument itself. That's nothing that I regret, but I really should have been smarter about my time.
This is what I definitely want to end the interview with this.
Okay. Yeah.
So share an embarrassing moment or the most embarrassing moment on stage. It can be.
Oh man, I got a pretty good one. And man, yeah, my wife she still digs this into my ribs.
You gotta. They can do
man,
that.
So man, I was playing with this guy named Arthur Brown. He was a huge influence on like Alice Cooper and Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden and Kiss. Like it's where Kiss got the makeup thing. He's like the OG like theater psychedelic rock guy, basically. So we're doing this show in at Psycho Fest in Las Vegas at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. There's like chicks like juggling fire, and there's like pyro, and there's all this stuff. Nice. But there was this so there's this part in the hit tune where there's this big guitar solo. And so I'm taking this big guitar solo. Meanwhile, Arthur is walking out into the audience. So none of us know this is going to happen. So all of a sudden, Arthur just disappeared. We're kind of looking around and, I don't know what's going on. Like everybody keeps going. And so I keep going. And at this point, he's walked off the stage and he's gone into the audience. I don't have any of him in my monitor. He's sitting there shouting my name over the entire PA.
Oh no!
I can't hear a word of it. So I just take this solo for like 3 minutes. It's just doesn't end because I'm thinking it's just like, all right, man. Like I'm not stopping until somebody tells me to stop because I can't. Like I don't see where he is. I can't hear him. I can't do any of this stuff. So meanwhile, over the PA, it's like Carter's British guy. just bellowing my name throughout the entire PA and in front of this entire audience.
That is beautiful.
My wife has to flag me from the side of the stage. I'm just totally zoned out in my own world. There he is, and I'm like, oh, oops, and then launch into it. And of course, it's captured in full shame, forever.
That's beautiful. I love
it.
It
was, but man, it was a moment of honesty. It was definitely a moment of honesty. I own it. Totally did it. Aside from that, that's probably the worst. Even me spacing out for 3 minutes, like just shredding. Even if something goes horribly wrong, if you can land it, it's just like, man, people will totally accept that.
Dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Man, I just had fun talking, man.
Final question. Where should my students check you out?
It's CarterArrington.com. Facebook, Carter Arrington Music, I think that's it, at CA Guitar on Instagram. But yeah, man, those three, like Facebook and Instagram, I'm probably on the most. But I've got an instructional course coming out on True Fire.
I saw that. I saw the first, intro stuff of that. And that's some serious leveling up right there. If you guys want to level up, that would be a way to go. Very cool. Well, dude, thank you again so much for doing this.
My pleasure, dude. Great to see you. And,
yes.
Stay sane. I'll talk to you soon, man.